Good evening. I shared some thoughts a couple of weeks ago on the beginning of the third chapter of Koheles of Ecclesiastes, and I'd like to continue now with the second pasuk. Eis laledes ve'eis lamus, a time to give birth and a time to die. Eis lata'as ve'eis la'akor notua, a time to time to plant and a time to uproot that which was planted. And the third verse begins, Eis laharog, a time to kill, ve'eis lirpo, and a time to heal. And really one of the reasons why it's been so long since I last spoke about this is because I was really spending a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to explain this. I think I finally came up with an explanation that I feel satisfied and comfortable sharing. I saw one of the commentators asked a question that why does the pasuk contrast eis laledes ve'eis lamus, a time to give birth and a time to die? Normally, we don't contrast death with birth. We usually contrast death with life. Why is it over here that it's contrasting birth with death? So I'll share with you the thoughts. This is kind of like a little bit of a stream of consciousness, but I'll share with you the thoughts that were going through my mind and the ideas that I came up with. As I'm sure you're aware, throughout human history, one of the most dangerous activities in which a woman could possibly engage is that of giving birth. And that quite often, the eis laledes, the time for birth, was simultaneously the eis lamus, the time for death. And as many of us are familiar with, that was part of the klala, the curse that was given to Chava, that was given to Eve after the sin of eating from the Eitz Hadas, that giving birth was going to be accompanied with be'itzvi, with sadness, is going to accompany giving birth. And where I really took this thought was that also it is known that compared to all the animals, humans seem to have the most difficult time giving birth. Most animals give birth relatively easily. They don't have to all be shipped off to hospitals to give birth and have doctors and midwives and all sorts of medical equipment. Certainly the animals that lay eggs in order to produce their young definitely have it even much easier. The simple answer is, yeah, but Hashem punished Chava, But I was trying to see if I could come up with a bit of a deeper understanding of why is it that specifically human birth is attended by such difficulty. And I was thinking that quite literally, in order for a human child to be born, the child has to get tremendously squeezed in order to come out. And in a certain respect, that's very similar to the process of tzimtzum, in which Hashem constricted and limited himself in order to bring forth the world. In many respects, giving birth, having children, the creation of a new life, of a new person, that's the most godlike behavior that we as humans engage in. So maybe it's not so much of a surprise, the fact that in order to accomplish that feat, we have to be godlike in the respect that just as in order for God to create, there is a process of constriction, so too for humans to procreate, there is this process of constriction. I think also in a certain respect, in order for God to create the world and have room for our existence, the very idea of tzimtzum, of the creation, of the constriction that God underwent for creation, was a removal, in a certain respect, of God from this world. He could not exist in his full form in the same space as his creation. And perhaps that's part of a reason why that giving birth also, to some respect, demands and requires a negation of the one giving birth in order to be able to leave room for the offspring. And if that's correct, then that might give us a little bit of insight into the rest of the pasuk and the beginning of the next pasuk. That oftentimes, in order to create, we have to destroy. Right? As we said beforehand, the pasuk goes on, Eis lata'as, there's a time to plant, ve'eis la'akor natua, and a time to uproot that which is planted. As someone who's in the landscaping business, I can tell you very clearly that you plant and you also rip out. Sometimes you have to rip out things just because where they're growing, we rip out weeds. But in order for the planting to be successful, there's often a bit of an uprooting of planting that accompanies that as well. And the same thing in the next verse, Eis laharog ve'eis lirpo, a time to kill and a time to heal. Perhaps we can suggest that once again, these are not talking about two different times, but these are simultaneous acts that are occurring at the exact same time. Because sometimes when we see evil in the world, or when someone who's evil has to be executed, it is the killing that is in and of itself that brings about the healing. So again, what I'm suggesting is that in all three of these cases, these are not necessarily separate times, but at the exact same time could be a time to give birth and a time to die. In order to plant, you might have to uproot something else which is planted. In order to heal, it's possible that has to be accompanied by killing as well. Thank you very much for listening.